now that it was taken out by Yang Qindong. Everyone was curious as to how it could be calculated in such a way. However, when the multiplication formula was read out, everyone was shocked. It turned out that arithmetic could have such a pattern and be so simple. For a moment, everyone was shocked. Huyen, Qiaoyin, and the others who were listening from the side were also shocked by this method. For a moment, everyone's mood to learn was very high. At the end of the day, Yang Qindong's mouth was a little dry from all the teaching. Not long after class ended, he heard a subordinate report that a red signal flare had flashed in the capital. According to the agreement, a red signal flare meant that there was danger, but it had basically been resolved. When there were only 2 flare, it meant that there was a need for backup. When there were 3 flare, it meant that there was an emergency. But even though he knew the significance of a red signal flare, Yang Qindong was still a little nervous. He did not know who was going to attack his faction. Thinking that there was nothing wrong with being careful, he immediately gathered a platoon of cold front soldiers, brought along Tiger's Mane, Beta Persei, and Chiu V's first guard squad, and rushed to the capital. After he left, the Yang family manor was also quickly placed under martial law. Battalion Commander Tung Shan led the remaining 2 platoons of cold front soldiers to guard it to ensure that nothing went wrong. In the capital, Chung Qian's squad of soldiers had been on high alert this entire time. Even though the corpse was not far away, no one went to investigate. This continued until Battalion Commander Wu Sheng arrived with the first batch of soldiers. After the 2 sides met up, they immediately began to inspect and deal with the scene. Fortunately, they found 2 uninjured assassins and quickly detained them for a sudden interrogation. But just as this was done, the embroidered uniform guards and the 5 cities warden's office arrived. Just as they were about to approach the scene, they received a warning from Battalion Commander Wu Sheng. Those who have come, listen up. I don't care who you are. Which yamen do you belong to? This place has already been sealed off. No one is allowed to approach. Otherwise, don't blame the bullets for not having eyes. With Wu Sheng's words and the mention of the banner of his mercenaries, the soldiers of the 5 cities warden's office naturally obediently stood their ground. On the other hand, the embroidered uniform guards who came relied on their status to shout that they were the emperor's personal guards and had the right and duty to inspect everything. As they shouted, they also tried to move closer. Bang! Bang! 2 gunshots suddenly rang out, hitting the feet of the embroidered uniform guards who were about to step forward. The dust that was kicked up instantly taught them how to behave. The originally shouting voices immediately became much softer until there was no more movement. The mercenaries had once more used their strength to show the outside world that they were not subject to any restrictions. Anyone who dared to challenge their military discipline would have to pay the price in blood. No one moved forward, but this did not mean that no one was paying attention. On the contrary, it didn't take long for the upper echelons of the embroidered uniform guards and the 5 cities warden's office to arrive. This included Inspector Shiheng, who had returned to the capital before the end of the year, Commander Sun Pe, Commander Lu Gui, and fellow Commander Ji Guang. What's going on in front? Why was there a gunshot? As soon as Shiheng appeared, he asked arrogantly. Shiheng had been promoted to Inspector General, Commander-in-Chief, and Count of Wuqing for his meritorious service, and then he had led an army of 150,000 soldiers to battle the Walla. But because he had been too careless, he had been schemed against and lost the battle. If not for Yang Qindong's timely intervention, the capital would have been lost. Logically speaking, a defeated general was a guilty general and should have been punished and imprisoned. But in the Great Ming, nothing was absolute. Meritorious officials could not receive substantial rewards, while guilty officials could rise to the heavens in a single step. This was a characteristic of the time. In the Great Ming, A person's meritorious service was not determined by how capable they were. In the end, it depended on whether they obeyed the emperor and obeyed imperial authority. Shi Heng originally had the merit of being the emperor. This time, after he came back, he spent a lot of money and even bribed Jining. In addition, when he saw Zhu Qiyu, the Daizong, he was in pain with snot and tears. He said that he was loyal to the emperor and would listen to the emperor's orders. He was willing to do anything for the emperor. After a few maneuvers, Zhu Qiyu was truly moved. Not only was he not punished, but he was also reinstated to the position of military governor. He was even given the important task of rebuilding the army with Jining. He was promoted from his original position of Count Wuqing to Marquis Wuqing. Zhu Qiyu's intentions were extremely clear. He wanted to promote Shi Heng and restrict Yang Qindong's influence in the army. Regaining the emperor's trust and wielding great power made Shi Heng feel like he didn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. As soon as he arrived, he began to speak as if he were the master of this place. In response to Shi Heng's behavior, the subordinates all lowered their heads in silence. These people had been in the capital for a long time, and many of them had even witnessed the battle between the mercenaries and the Walla. Naturally, they knew how powerful these people were. Chapter 256. And Eugenie guards, don't you like to join in the fun? Do you like to watch the fun? You clearly know that this Duke's third madam is here, but you didn't say anything. Do you want the previous incident to happen again? In anger, Yang Qindong said threatening words. As for the previous incident, it was naturally referring to the eunuch who claimed to be his duke and clashed with Yang Qindong's title of duke. Later, when the reminder was to no avail, more than 10 eunuchs and stewards were threatened in one night and almost lost their lives. After that incident, no eunuch called himself master anymore. Even if they had to call him master, they had to call themselves master. Now, Yang Qindong mentioned this incident. It was obvious that he intended to admit that he arranged for someone to do that. But with such an admission, L.V. Gui did not dare to question him. On the contrary, he hurriedly lowered his head. He, who had experienced Yang Qindong's power more than once, naturally knew the serious consequences of angering him. As soon as Yang Qindong appeared, he first reprimanded Shi Heng. Then L.V. Gui, Ji Guang, and Sun Tong did not run away. Even the soldiers of the great Ming dynasty lowered their heads in shame. With such momentum, there was no need to continue the war. The winner had already been decided. Under the angry reprimand, no one dared to confront him. Yang Qindong seemed to be less angry. He turned around and walked to the side of the soft sedan. As soon as he opened the curtain, Madame Snow, who was wearing a brocade robe, plunged into Yang Qindong's arms and shouted, "Lu Lang, I'm scared. I almost couldn't see you again. Don't be afraid. With Lu Lang here, no one will dare to bully you." Yang Qindong reached out and patted Madame Snow's back. He looked at Ching Qian and said, "Tell me what's going on." "Master, it's like this." In order not to expose his relationship with Yang Qindong in front of outsiders, Cheng Qian did not call him the sixth young master directly. Instead, he called him master. "Tonight, we'll send third madam back to Yang Manor." From Cheng Qian's mouth, he recounted everything that happened that night from beginning to end. From these words, everyone finally understood what had happened and why the mercenaries had opened fire in the city. At the end of his speech, Cheng Qian pointed to the ground and said, "Duke, all the bodies of the killers are here. There are still 2 survivors. They just confessed that they are the subordinates of Lu San, a scoundrel in the city. They were ordered by their boss to cause trouble for third madam." "Lu San?" Yang Qindong repeated the name, his eyes filled with murderous intent. He then turned his head abruptly and looked at Lu Gui, Sun Tong, and the others, saying, Everyone should have heard very clearly what's going on. Next, will you be the one to capture this person, or will I be the one to do it? We'll do it. For the mercenaries to dare to do this, they are clearly looking down on imperial authority. This subject believes that if we want to put an end to this, we must first strengthen ourselves. This subject requests that Your Majesty increase the amount of silver and increase the speed of recruiting soldiers. At the same time, we must equip 3 firearm battalions and 1 artillery battalion. Once we have enough strength, no one will dare to challenge imperial authority or Your Majesty. I second the motion. Jining also knelt on the ground and voiced her support for Jining. As Zhu Qiyu's most trusted subjects, the two of them were well aware of their positions. Only when the emperor's authority was strong enough would their authority be secure. Just as they had said earlier, if the army could be completed sooner, with 3 firearm battalions and 1 artillery battalion, they would have the strength to fight against the mercenaries. When the time came, if they really wanted to attack, once the cannons were fired, the entire place would be razed to the ground. At that time, who would dare to look down on them and the emperor? That's right, my dear subject, you are right. The fist is the absolute truth. How about this? I will immediately increase the amount by 2 million taels of silver to expand the army. Zhu Qiyu nodded repeatedly, looking as if he had been persuaded by Shi Heng's words. Hearing that it was only 2 million taels of silver, Shi Heng was a little unwilling. This amount of silver was enough to build a normal army, but this time they were building 3 firearm battalions and 1 artillery battalion. That was definitely an act of burning silver. 2 million taels was really not enough. Just as Shi Heng was about to raise his head and say something, he heard Jin Ying's quiet reminder. Lord Shi, don't go too far. Some things need to be discussed at length. As one of Zhu Qiyu's personal attendants, Jin Ying naturally had a deep understanding of this emperor. This emperor was an ambitious person. His courage was no less than Zhu Qiju's. His mind was flexible, and he was open-minded. He treated his subjects well. But there was one thing that was a little too stingy. Say that Zhen is not feeling well. If there is anything, say it at the morning court tomorrow. Zhu Qiyu waved his hand at the young eunuch who came to report. He made the decision to not meet him. The young eunuch left. Yu Shuriwe, who was waiting outside the palace, heard the emperor's words and sighed deeply. Then he shook his head and slowly turned to leave. His grandson was extremely daring. He had actually taken the initiative to find trouble with the loyal duke. After learning of the matter, Yu Shuriwe knew that things were not good. His first reaction was to see the emperor and plead for leniency. He thought that no matter what, he was an old official and an important official. The emperor should give him some face. As long as the emperor was willing to mediate, the loyal duke would have to give him some face. However, the emperor did not want to see him. This had already made his attitude clear. Now, it seemed that he could only beg the loyal duke himself. However, when he thought about how the other party was still a child who had just grown up, if the news of his status asking to see the other party spread, how would he have any face in the future? Forget it. Forget it. It's just a crime of instigating. There is no conclusive evidence and no serious consequences. Based on my position as the Minister of Justice, without conclusive evidence, it won't be so easy to touch Xiong. Minister Yu comforted himself like this and left the palace. He was prepared to use his power to wrestle with the loyal duke. Yu Shuriwe was a person who had studied since childhood. He had a photographic memory and could recite with a glance. In the 13th year of Yongle 1415, he became a grand scholar and served as an imperial censor. After Zhu Qiyu ascended the throne, he was promoted to the position of Minister of Justice. He could be considered to be extraordinarily capable. Moreover, when he was young, he was also upright and honest. However, now that he was old, his temperament had changed a lot. In order to achieve his goal, he had also done some things that inverted right and wrong. His personality was hypocritical and polite, and he was no longer as hard-hearted and impartial as when he was young. This time, the matter involved his own grandson. Although he had more than one grandson, how could he casually abandon his own family? As such, he left the palace and headed straight for the Ministry of Justice. The power of a minister of justice was not something that others could imagine. Yu Xiong's case involved criminal matters. Naturally, it was not a problem to take him away from the embroidered uniform guard and transfer him to the Ministry of Justice. The embroidered uniform guards were having a headache. Yu Xiong had already been caught. He had been dragged out of his bed early in the morning. Now that he had been caught, how to deal with him and how to interrogate him had become a headache. On one hand, it was the loyal duke who was the victim. On the other hand, it was the old Minister of Justice. It seemed that no matter what they did, it would be easy to offend them. It was at this moment that a document from the Ministry of Justice arrived, requesting that the suspect, Yu Xiong, be sent to the Ministry of Justice for interrogation. Since someone wanted a hot potato, how could the embroidered uniform guard be polite? They immediately sent Yu Xiong out and had some peace and quiet. The Ministry of Justice took over, and the news was quickly sent to Yang Qindong. At this moment, the sixth young master was teaching students in the Yang Family Academy and imparting his new knowledge. Today, Yang Qindong was talking about the effects of gravity. He was teaching everyone that everything could be explained scientifically. Just as the lecture was in full swing and everyone was listening with great interest, Tiger's Mane came and whispered something in Yang Qindong's ear. "Got it." Yang Qindong nodded, and a faint smile appeared on his face. Then he turned to the 101 students and said, "Today's lesson will end here. Everyone, go back and review. If there's anything you don't understand, you can ask me tomorrow. Let's study by ourselves." Under the respectful gazes of all the students, Yang Qindong left the academy. Outside the door, the head of the security bureau, Yang San, was already waiting. What happened? Yang Qindong took a wet towel and wiped his hands as he asked Yang San, "Young master, Yu Xiong was arrested early in the morning. Yu Shuriwei went to the palace, but the emperor did not see him. However, after returning to the Ministry of Justice, he ordered people to take his grandson from the embroidered uniform guard to the Ministry of Justice and protect him. Because the people protecting him are all his trusted subordinates, they don't know what happened. However, it can be seen that they have no intention of compromising and are still holding on to hope." Yang Sen explained everything he knew to Yang Qindong and then stood respectfully to the side. His job was only to tell the truth. As for the specific decisions, it was up to the young master to make the decision. "Oh, this minister, Yu wants to compete with this young master." Yang Qindong was not surprised at all. On the contrary, he chuckled. However, the smile quickly disappeared. "Did you find the person I asked you to find?" The so-called looking for someone referred to how Yu Xiong had forced her husband to write a letter of separation in order to protect himself in a foreign land in order to get a woman. A few days ago, when Yang Qindong met with Yu Xiong, he arranged for the security bureau to search for Yu Xiong. There should be news by now. We found him. According to the young master's orders, he is coming to the capital under the protection of the security bureau. He will probably arrive tomorrow night," Yang Sen said with his chest puffed out. You also know that in this world, as long as there is money, there are few things that cannot be done. Su Yozhen's face was full of respect, and she spoke very carefully. Merchant? Jining didn't understand at first, but then she nodded. That's right. The Duke of Loyalty isn't completely loyal. As long as you give him enough money, it's possible to get some of his secrets. But what does he want to do with these things? Jin Ing held the documents that recorded all the mistakes that Yu Shirue had made since he became an official. She knew very well that if these were made public, this Minister of Justice's career would be over. How could a person with so many problems be in charge of a country's criminal justice? Wouldn't this be like saying that a thief needs to be interrogated? Wouldn't he be laughed at by others? It must be because of Yu Xiong. After all, as the mastermind behind the scenes, he almost hurt the third madam of the Duke of Loyalty. With his personality, it would be strange if he didn't retaliate. Su Yozhen spoke as if she was guessing, but in reality, this guess was already a kind of reality. But even if Yu Xiong did something wrong, he shouldn't implicate the innocent. After all, Minister Yu is someone that the emperor just used. If something happens to him, it will affect the emperor's reputation. Jining said somewhat angrily. Before she could finish her sentence, Su Yozhen interrupted. That's true, but Eunuch Jin also knows that Yu Xiong is currently in the Ministry of Justice's prison. I've heard that he's doing quite well. So why is he being treated like this? Presumably, if the root of the problem is not solved, this matter will not be solved. In other words, Minister Yu is someone that cannot be avoided. You can't avoid him, and you can't act rashly, Jining said in an unquestionable tone. As the emperor's trusted aide and the head eunuch, Jin Ing could not have everything she had now without the emperor's support. Thus, he would not allow anything that would damage the emperor's authority to happen. It was no wonder that he was so angry. Su Yozhen understood this very well. Fortunately, he had already discussed the countermeasures with Yang Qindong. Seeing that Jining was angry and that everything was going according to plan, Su Yozhen took half a step forward. Eunuch Jin, the Duke of Loyalty's personality. He is someone who will seek revenge for the smallest grievance. I'm afraid that he is only thinking about how to overthrow Minister Yu and then punish Yu Xiong. As for the consequences, I'm afraid that he won't think too much about it. How could Jining not know such a big truth? However, he still said the same thing. He would not allow anyone to challenge the emperor's authority. Thus, if such a thing was going to happen, he had to stop it. Speak. However, with this person's death, it was likely that other people who wanted to harm him would have to think twice before acting. They would have to think about how tough their necks were and whether they would be able to escape death after making a move. Yu Xiong's matter was just a small interlude. He was the kind of person who sought his own death. Yang Qindong's current focus was on the Yang Family Academy and the construction of the Great Ming's new army. After receiving the 2 million taels of silver, Shi Heng and Jin Ing each embezzled 300,000 taels of silver. After adding in the demands of the various officials, they only had 1 million taels of silver. However, this 1 million taels of silver was enough for them to build a standing army of 150,000 people, 3 firearm battalions of 15,000 people, and an artillery battalion of 2,000 people. 1 million taels of silver was enough to accomplish these things. It was all thanks to the Ming dynasty's military household system. As the saying went, once a person entered a military household, they would be a military household for generations to come. In other words, once a person was recognized as a soldier, their sons could only be soldiers, and their daughters could only marry soldiers. It was also this measure that ensured that the number of soldiers in the Great Ming dynasty's army was always maintained at a very high level. There were articles that recorded that during the Great Ming dynasty, the standing army in the country was always more than 1.5 million people. Among them, the military household system played an important role. Looking at the information sent to him by the Security Bureau, Yang Qindong knew that the road ahead was full of thorns. Disregarding everything else, just the large number of soldiers was not easy to deal with. They were all Han people, and they were all from the same ancestor. Could he bear to kill all of them? Not to mention, he did not have the ability to do so right now. Yang Qindong wanted the great Ming dynasty to become the center of the world, and the great Ming dynasty civilization to become the ancestor of human civilization. In the future, no matter where a Han person went, they would be respected and looked up to by others. This would require the support of countless people, and they would definitely not allow a major event like internal strife to happen. However, there were some things that did not depend on one's own will. When someone hated you and wanted to kill you, it was not something that could be resolved just by giving them some benefits. After pondering for a moment, Yang Qindong gave a secret order to his most trusted subordinate, Tiger's man. Let's do this. Find a merchant to find Yang Guang. No matter what, the position of general of the artillery battalion must be taken by him. Don't be stingy with money. This is very important for our safety. If a person wanted to accomplish great things, help others, and bring everyone to power, they had to meet one condition, and that was absolute safety. Looking at the new army of the great Ming dynasty, regardless of whether it was ordinary soldiers or elite firearms battalion, Yang Qindong did not care about them at all. With the large warehouse that could be entered at any time, if they provoked him, he could casually take out some new weapons and deal with them without a problem. However, the artillery battalion was annoying. Chapter 261. After all, Yang Qindong was immortal, and the Yang Manor was not an impenetrable fortress. If the artillery battalion really set their sights on him, the consequences would be unimaginable. This was the most annoying thing. Yang Qindong had come into contact with Yang Guang a few times and found that he was a man of few words. However, he was a loyal and considerate person who valued loyalty greatly. If Yang Qindong could spend some money to befriend him, he could at least warn him in advance, even though he couldn't make him disobey the orders of his superior or even the acting emperor at a critical moment. This way, he would have more time to react and an additional layer of protection for his life. Tiger's mane nodded after receiving the order. Young master, don't worry. I'll go to the Security Bureau and find a clever person to disguise himself as a wealthy businessman to support Deputy Commander Yang. But young master, our men have discovered that Guard Captain Ike Shang is wantonly moving through the capital. I've heard that he's spent a large sum of money, and our men have learned that he's already heading for the sea. It seems like he's planning to return to Japan and get reinforcements. Young master, do you want us to intercept and kill him on the way, or inform Commander Gao Xiong and have him take care of the problem at sea? No need. Let him do as he pleases. Also, inform Gao Xiong and tell him not to make things difficult for the messenger. If it's necessary, you can say some words of support, but don't take any practical actions. Speaking of this issue, Yang Qindong's face regained its indifferent smile. Because of Junko, Ikegami, Yuki failed in his pursuit, and the head of the diplomatic mission, Aoki Yuki, was held accountable and imprisoned in the Ministry of Rights. Although there was no imperial order to condemn him, everyone could see that he was simply being held in a different place. Naturally, it was Yang Qindong's intervention that led to the current situation. During the New Year, when he went to see his father-in-law and grandfather, he openly said that he would definitely teach Aoki Yugue a lesson and let him know that the great Ming dynasty was not Japan. He would not be able to do whatever he wanted. It was Yang Qindong who had expressed his stance, and Aoki Utakai had been detained by the law enforcement officials of the Ministry of Rights. And because Yang Qindong had spent a lot of money, neither the Ministry of Justice nor the embroidered uniform guards had interfered. As a result, even though Qi Shang, the captain of the guards, had done a lot, the situation had not been alleviated or resolved. Since the matter couldn't be solved, Qi Shang made a foolish decision. He reported the matter to his country and asked his country to step forward and pressure the great Ming dynasty. The power was slowly gathering in his hands. Yang Qindong observed all these changes as if he was an outsider. Other than reading the intelligence sent by the Security Bureau every day, he spent most of his time teaching the students of the Yang Family Academy. After nearly 2 months, more than 60 people were eliminated from the original 101 people, and only 2/5 of them were left. Among the people who left, some of them couldn't keep up. Originally, they wanted to use the name of the Duke of Loyalty and the East Marshal to fish in troubled waters and make a name for themselves. Then, with the title of this person's student, it could be imagined that it would be much easier to mingle in the officialdom. There were also some people who really had the idea of learning. After all, the person who could make such a majestic poem, like Snow of the Yang Family Village, must have great strength. But when they really learned it, they knew that he taught more about numbers, physics, chemistry, and science. And in the big environment where only Confucianism was respected, these were nothing more than heterodox methods, and it was difficult to be recognized by the orthodox. Since they couldn't be recognized, they simply stopped learning. The third part of the people who left were those who didn't have enough IQ or couldn't bear the hardships. This was because the Yang Family Academy required students to run every day and stand in military posture. Under this semi-militarized management, some of the young people who only knew how to study were unable to bear it. In the end, because they made too many mistakes, their military posture was taken away, and they had to leave. Most of them left, and 2/5 of them were the elites among them. Among them, Yang Qindong did find a lot of good seedlings. While he carefully observed, he also guided them according to their individual advantages, making the learning atmosphere of the people who stayed very high. It was worth mentioning that Junko actually relied on her own ability to persist until now. Originally, Yang Qindong accepted Junko as a student because he wanted to put her in his sight. After all, he still needed her in the future, so he casually accepted her. When he made this decision, he was also prepared to let her go and force her to stay if she couldn't hold on at any time. But unexpectedly, although Junko was young, her body was full of tenacity, and she was one of the best in all kinds of assessments and studies. Not only did she not rely on Yang Qindong to stay, but she also became a goddess in the eyes of many men. More than half of the male students secretly liked her, including Wang Si, the grandson of the minister of the Ministry of Personnel. Wang Ji, Junko's fluent Mandarin, coupled with her beautiful face and lively personality, made Wang Si unable to extricate himself. Junko clearly knew all of this, but she didn't point it out. She didn't agree or disagree, but instead kept a distance from the people who liked her. Today, she took the initiative to say a few words to you, but tomorrow or the day after, she might ignore you for a few days. This kind of performance had once caused many male students to be unable to study normally. Humph! This is their innate charm. After hearing Tiger's Main's report, and thinking of the things they produced in the future, and the Aoi people who were often mentioned by Chinese men, this Junko was obviously their ancestor. It wasn't a crime for a person to be beautiful, but if they wanted to use this power to stir up trouble in his territory, Yang Qindong couldn't tolerate them. Tiger's Mane spread the news that Junko is a girl from Japan. No matter who marries her, in the future, he will have to follow her to Japan and become her son-in-law. Even the children born in the future will have to follow her family name. Yang Qindong winked at Tiger's Mane, revealing a deep meaning in his eyes. Tiger's Mane immediately understood and immediately said, "Young master, don't worry, I will do it right away." Tiger's mane complied, and only an hour later, Junko appeared outside Yang Qindong's study with a beautiful face. With a wronged expression on her face, Junko didn't dare to take a step forward. These days, she more or less understood this Dong Shuai in people's eyes. This person seemed to be very kind, but he had a sense of propriety and bottom line when doing things. For example, this study was not a place she could enter and leave at will. She remembered that once she inadvertently wanted to take advantage of Yang Qindong's absence to take a look, but when she came to the door, a sharp knife was placed on her throat. Junko didn't even know when the other person appeared, but she felt a boundless killing intent. Under this kind of killing intent, she was afraid. Junko had a feeling that if she really dared to take a step forward, she was afraid that her head would be separated from her body, and she would die. After that incident, Junko became a lot more well-behaved. She also had a clearer understanding that Dong Shuai, who always had a smile on his face, was not only the idol of many women, but also a demon who killed without batting an eyelid. Chapter 262. Logically speaking, after knowing that he was a devil, the most important thing to do was to leave. Captain Kobayashi had told her more than once that he didn't find anyone watching her. But for some reason, Junko didn't want to leave. Whenever she was about to make the decision to leave, Yang Qindong's smiling face would often appear in her mind, and that smile would make her linger back and forth. So she always found various reasons to persuade Kobayashi and herself to stay in the Yang family manor and the Yang family academy day after day. Staying in the Yang family academy was the happiest time of Junko's life. Here, she not only enjoyed equal treatment with everyone, but also didn't have to pay attention to any rules when interacting with people. On the contrary, she could also learn some new knowledge that she had never heard of before or even thought of before. Slowly, Junko became deeply immersed in it, and she also found that the students who were able to stay in the academy were very smart and could endure hardships. These advantages were exactly what her father, who was in the royal family of Japan, wanted. So she gave birth to other thoughts, which was to take these people for her own use. If there was a chance, after these people finished their studies, she could deceive them to go to Japan. She believed that it would play a positive role in her father's efforts to stabilize the throne. In order to achieve this unspeakable goal, Junko deliberately used her charm jutsu, intentionally or unintentionally making contact with the male students. She had been formally trained since childhood on how to please a man. Soon, Junko achieved her goal, making more than one student fall head over heels for her, and express their willingness to submit to her. She thought that if she continued to do this, when she graduated from the academy, she could leave with these people. But an unexpected disaster happened, and her identity as a Japanese was suddenly exposed. Not only that, but it was also said that the man she was going to marry was likely to eventually go to Japan by marrying into her family. As soon as this matter came out, the expressions of those male students who admired her instantly changed. At that time, the difference between the status of men and women was very obvious. It was very common for men to be the head of the family and women to be the head of the family. Things like marrying into the family was absolutely disgraceful. As for the students who were able to stay until now, which one of them wasn't smart and proud? How could they do such a disgraceful thing? At that moment, the male students who liked to listen to Junko's words quickly began to keep their distance from her. Some of them even avoided her, as if she was a scourge. This made Junko's efforts go down the drain. She was so angry that she wanted to look for Yang Qindong to be the judge. But now, the princess of the imperial family actually said that they are peace-loving. What a ridiculous statement. But at the same time, it also proved that the current Japan is not strong enough, at least compared to the great Ming dynasty. It is still a lot worse. While laughing in his heart, Yang Chendong was calm on the surface. Oh, Miss Junko is a peace-loving person. This is very good. It is a pity that you are only born in a merchant family. You can't represent Japan. After pointing out that Junko's identity is too ordinary, her words naturally can't be trusted. Junko's face changed greatly. At this time, she suddenly wanted to confess her identity, but this thought just flashed through her mind, because she knew that if Japan really did something bad to the Great Ming Dynasty, once her identity was exposed, it would be extremely dangerous, and she might even be immediately arrested by the Great Ming Dynasty's army. Her identity can't be exposed. For Yang Chendong's words, Junko can't refute. She can only stand there and ask with a cautious attitude, I don't know what your emperor and ministers think about Kimura Yoshida's proposal. Normally, it was a bit inappropriate for Junko to ask such a question. Yang Chendong didn't have to say it to her, but this was originally part of the plan. So Dong Shuai showed that he didn't object and said, on this issue, the emperor and the minister's views are not unified. Some people are really frightened by Kimura Yoshida's words. You also know that the Great Ming Dynasty's territory is vast, and the coastline near the sea is extremely long, so it is impossible to be vigilant everywhere. If Japan really attacks in places where we are not prepared, it will be a real headache. So, some ministers propose to release the former head of the envoy, Aoki Yuki, and hand you over. Chapter 263. You're going to hand me over? Junko was surprised. That's right. Back then, those assassins came for you. I just happened to pass by. If we want to compromise, of course, we will hand you over to the Japanese. Sai, I was wondering how you offended them. It looks like they won't give up until they catch you. Yang Chendong asked curiously. He didn't mention that Junko was the princess of Japan. He wanted to see how long she could hide it. When she heard Yang Chendong say that the Great Ming was not only prepared to compromise, but also wanted to hand her over, Junko's face turned pale. No, they hate my family. Once they catch me, they will kill me. As she spoke, Junko had already walked to Yang Chendong's side. She reached out and grabbed his arm. Her eyes were filled with a pitiful look. Don't! I will faint if you continue like this. The two of them were very close to each other. Yang Chendong could already smell the fragrance of Junko's body. He enjoyed the feeling very much, but he still said, you don't have to be too anxious. What I'm saying is just the opinion of some of the ministers. Some of them think that we shouldn't compromise with Japan. If they want to cause trouble for us, we'll open up the Forbidden Sea and send an army to Japan. We'll teach them a lesson and let them know who they can't afford to provoke. When Yang Chendong said her father's name, Junko's face changed. No, the emperor will not make trouble for the Great Ming. There must be some villains behind this. You must investigate this thoroughly. Oh, how do you know that the emperor won't make trouble for the Great Ming? You are not a member of the imperial family. Yang Chendong asked with a surprised expression. When Junko heard these words, she couldn't help but open her mouth to defend herself. However, just as she opened her mouth, she quickly closed it again. Yes, it's just my guess. When I was in the country, I heard from my father that the emperor is an emperor who doesn't like war. I don't think he will take the initiative to start a war with the Great Ming. Oh, so it was just hearsay. Unfortunately, it seems that what you heard is not true. Kimura Yoshida has already arrived, and he has already expressed the intentions of your emperor. The way I see it, this war might start soon. Yang Chendong shook his head and expressed his opinion. Junko was very anxious at this moment, and she was cursing Yang Chendong's stupidity in her heart. The outside world said that Dong Shuai was smart, but now it seemed that he was just SOSO. He actually mistakenly thought that the Emperor of Japan wanted to go to war with the Great Ming Dynasty. What a stupid idea. At this time, Junko really wanted to open Yang Chendong's head and see what he was thinking. Once again, the thought of exposing her identity popped up in Junko's mind. She opened her mouth, but didn't say anything in the end. She didn't know what would happen if she revealed her true identity. She didn't dare to take the risk. On the contrary, she believed in herself more. She decided to leave Yang Village immediately and find a way to go back to Japan to see her father. Kimura Yoshida's coming to the great Ming dynasty was simply a conspiracy to overthrow the royal family. General Ashikaga Yoshimasa clearly wanted to use war to mobilize the emotions of the entire country. Only in times of war could a general have more power and do many things that he couldn't do in normal times. Junko originally wanted to ask who revealed that she was Japanese, but because of the appearance of Kimura Yoshida, she was no longer in the mood to care about these trivial matters. After leaving Yang Chendong's study somewhat absent-mindedly, she went to Captain Xiao Lin's room. When he saw the princess take the initiative to appear, Kobayashi was naturally very happy, but when he saw Gong Yan's face as if she had been bullied, he couldn't help but say angrily, "Princess, who bullied you, tell Kobayashi I will teach him a lesson." Both of them spoke in Japanese, so they weren't afraid of being eavesdropped. Only at this time could Junko be completely relaxed. "Kobayashi, don't be agitated. No one bullied me. I just got the news that Kimura Yoshida is here." Junko then told Kobayashi the news she got from Yang Chendong in detail. When he heard that Kimura Yoshida was here and threatened the great Ming dynasty, Kobayashi immediately said angrily, "Princess, don't be afraid. I will personally kill this person tonight. As long as he is dead, all the problems will be solved." No. Junko shook her head decisively after hearing that. She didn't believe that Kobayashi could kill Kimura Yoshida with his strength. Since he was here, security was naturally the most important thing. Even if the emperor of the great Ming dynasty didn't have a definite result, he would send a large number of troops to protect him. Kobayashi alone couldn't do it. Junko's mind was still clear, and she had a clear understanding of the situation in front of her. It was precisely because of this that she didn't agree to Kobayashi's request. Instead, she said, "Kobayashi, you can't do it. It's too risky. This princess has decided that you will protect me and leave here. Then we will find a boat to leave the great Ming dynasty and return to Japan. I will tell everything to my father. Then he will have a way to solve the current situation." Junko said firmly. She decided to leave Yang Village and the great Ming dynasty, not because she was afraid of death, but because she didn't want to see Kimura Yoshida's conspiracy succeed. She needed to tell her father about it. She couldn't let him be kept in the dark. In the study, Tiger's Mane quietly entered and came to Yang Chendong. He whispered, "Young master, Miss Junko went to find Kobayashi, and now she has returned to her room." In order to prevent such a thing from happening to himself, Yang Chendong would not have any thoughts of underestimating the enemy. Since he suspects that the other side may have ninjas, he has to make some preparations in advance just in case. Compared to the ninjas who have been treated as death warriors since childhood, his life is really different. Junko knew nothing about the measures Kimura Yoshida might take. She only knew that this person appeared in the capital of the great Ming dynasty, and she was no longer safe here. She didn't even tell Yang Chendong that the Kimura family raised ninjas, because she was afraid that the more she said, the more flaws she would leave, and eventually lead to the suspicion of the other side. After all, Yang Chendong was too tall in her heart, and too smart, even to the point of almost reaching the point of omnipotence. In the face of such a person, she had to be careful every time she said a word. After a seemingly long wait, it finally came to night. When the sky was completely dark, the people of the Yang Village and the academy had dinner and entered the sleep mode. Kobayashi appeared in Junko's room like a ghost. "Ah, Kobayashi, you are here. Did anyone notice you?" Seeing Kobayashi suddenly appear in her room, Junko was surprised at first, and then asked with concern, "Your Highness, don't worry, no one noticed me. I have been here for so long, and they no longer pay attention to me. Also, I have found a way to leave the village. There is a loophole when they change the defense. As long as we seize the right time, we can leave without anyone noticing. Kobayashi said confidently, but what he didn't know was that the so-called loophole was left by Yang Qindong early in the morning. He knew that no defense could be 100% safe, so he deliberately left an obvious loophole. Instead of letting the opponent deliberately find the loophole, it was better to directly give him a ready-made one, so that the opponent would not have other ideas. Although Junko was smart, she knew too little about these military matters, so she chose to completely trust Kobayashi. Well, Kobayashi, then let's leave. Yes, Your Highness, please follow me. In a while, in order to increase our speed, Kobayashi may have to do something outside the rules. When saying these words, Kobayashi's face instinctively turned red. The so-called violation of the rules naturally referred to some necessary physical contact between the two of them. In order to leave here, Junko didn't care so much and immediately nodded. Well, I will listen to Kobayashi's arrangement. After the agreement, the two people appeared in the dark like two leopard cats, and then passed through several courtyards. Sometimes Kobayashi reached out and held Junko's slender waist, and ran quickly with her. In this way, after about a quarter of an hour, the two people walked out of the outer courtyard of the Yangja village and came to the outside desolate land. Even Kobayashi was so excited, let alone Junko. The dagger fell to the ground, and her palm was bleeding. All of this could no longer attract Junko's attention. There was only one sentence in her mind. You are my people. This young master didn't agree, so you can't die. What does he mean? What does he mean by, I am his people? Isn't he worried about my identity as a Japanese? The other men of the great Ming dynasty avoided her. Does he dare to face the difficulties head-on? What is he thinking? During the day, her identity was made public, and Junko's image and status in the Yang family academy fell by 1,000 miles. Those men of the great Ming dynasty who used to pursue her all expressed that they were thousands of miles away from her, which made Junko very sad. It also made her understand that with her identity, she could only marry the great Ming dynasty's royal family as a concubine and become a dispensable vase. But it was absolutely impossible for her to live with a man of the great Ming dynasty. Not for anything else, but because she was a Japanese. At that time, under the relatively backward and feudal thinking, no man of the great Ming dynasty would dare to marry her. It was because she couldn't see any hope and knew that Kimura Yoshida was coming that she made the decision to leave the Yang family village. Although she was very happy living here, she would never belong here. But when she was disheartened, Yang Qindong said that she was his people, which made her originally dead heart burn again, as if she saw a new hope. At this moment, Junko's heart was in a mess. At this moment of life and death, she was stunned, as if she didn't know that she was on the verge of death. A gunshot broke the silence of the night and made the ninjas on the opposite side vigilant. Rush over and kill them. One of the 3 high-level ninjas suddenly shouted in Japanese, and then dozens of black shadows quickly approached, rushing straight toward Yang Qindong and the others. Shoot at will. Tiger's Mane, who was leading the team, saw the black shadows quickly approaching and decisively gave the order to attack. Following this voice, the sound of gunfire could be heard, drawing out a bright meteor as it rushed forward. Kobayashi, protect Miss Junko. Yang Qindong also shouted, and the pistol in his right hand shot a bright bullet forward. Kobayashi was shouted and immediately threw Junko to the ground, so that she wouldn't be disturbed by the stray bullets. As he fell to the ground, he looked up and saw the ninjas in black getting hit by bullets one after another. Blood splattered everywhere as they fell to the ground and died. This was the first time that Kobayashi saw the power of advanced firearms at such a close distance. When he saw that the ninjas, who were known as ghosts and ghosts, were so vulnerable, there was only panic and shock in his eyes. He suddenly felt that all the martial arts he had painstakingly learned in the past were useless. In the face of such an advanced and accurate firearm, it seemed that no matter how strong one's martial arts were, it would be useless. Baka, rush over and kill them in close combat. Seeing that a ninja was hit by a gun and fell to the ground and lost his life, the leading ninja's voice was filled with monstrous anger. While giving the order loudly, he also moved quickly, and at the same time, his right hand was constantly throwing ninja dart, which was used for long-range attacks. The ninja dart broke through the air and flew forward. Yang Chendong, who was standing in the middle of the team, had a trace of indifference in his eyes, and shouted, "All of you throw away your torches and be on your guard." The ninja dart's power at close range was not inferior to firearms. This was something that Yang Chendong had experienced as early as in his last life. It's just that at that time, ninjas were almost extinct, and there were very few people who could use ninja dart. But now, when he returned to the Great Ming Dynasty, he actually saw such a thing again, which really gave him a headache. When modern firearms face cold weapons, the advantage is naturally very obvious. But it can't be said that there are no disadvantages. For example, in close combat, the effect of firearms becomes very poor, and in order to prevent self-injury, you have to be careful when shooting, which is equivalent to giving the opponent more opportunities and space to use their abilities. It was precisely because he recognized the power of ninja dart that Yang Chendong made some preparations in advance. It's just that he didn't expect that the opponent would use ninja dart so decisively, which caught him off guard. After the shout, the well-trained Lung Feng soldiers threw out the torches in their hands, and the originally bright place suddenly turned into darkness. But this order was given a little too late, and there were still 4 or 5 muffled groans in the darkness. Needless to say, the Lung Feng soldiers were injured by the dart. This was the first time that the Lung Feng soldiers were injured during a mission. What's more, in the darkness, the ninjas' speed of approaching was even faster, as if they were even more certain of their home ground. "Be careful, don't shoot casually." Yang Chendong's voice had a trace of fear. Just as he finished speaking, he felt a gust of cold wind coming towards him. Instinctively, he used his feet as an axis, and his body quickly fell backward. But just as his body leaned back, the wind from the blade brushed past his body. It's conceivable that if he was a little slower, he would have been injured. "Young master, be careful." Seeing that Yang Chendong was almost killed, Tiger's Mane and Beta Persei's voice quickly sounded, and then 2 figures quickly approached him. "I'm fine. Be careful." Chapter 266. Good timing. Seeing that the number of enemies had increased, Yang Chendong wasn't anxious. Instead, he was happy. He seemed to have been waiting for this moment. "Tiger's Mane, use the flash bomb." As soon as the words fell, a dazzling, pure, white light flew into the air, and then the entire area was illuminated as if it was daytime. The sudden appearance of this light in the dark caught everyone off guard. The ninjas who were rushing over didn't even have time to react to what happened. They only saw the light in front of them, and in an instant they had a feeling of blindness. It was at this time Chiovi's first guard team emerged from the layers of protection of Lung Feng. When they appeared, each of them held a 9mm assault rifle. The Type 95-5, 8mm light machine gun, is the light machine gun of the Type 95 squad gun family. It and the Type 95 automatic rifle form the squad gun family, and now it is gradually being equipped to the Army. The automatic parts of the gun family are all universal, and a large proportion of the parts are universal between rifles and light machine guns. The gun uses a holdless structure, The automatic mode is pneumatic type, and the head rotates and locks. It can fire single and continuous shots. The ammunition is supplied with 30 rounds of plastic magazine and 75 rounds of rapid reloading drum. The mechanical aiming device is a keyhole type. It is equipped with a muzzle device to reduce noise and flame. Caliber 5, 8 millimeters. Muzzle speed 970 meters per second. Gun weight 3, 95 kilograms. Gun length 840 millimeters. Bullet capacity 75. Effective range 600 m. The gun weighs 95 kilograms. Excluding the drum, the gun is 84 m long. The effective range is 600 m, and the gun is supplied with 75 rounds of ammunition. This is the killing weapon that Yang Qindong prepared after entering Daikra. As everyone knows, ninjas have always been very fast. They are so fast that when they run, they can burst out the limit of the human body, and they can even create afterimages. Facing this kind of speed, it is very difficult to catch them just by relying on the Type 95's single shot. The flash bomb's element of surprise can indeed provide a suitable opportunity for Lung Foam to make his move. But if he doesn't grasp it well, this kind of opportunity will be wasted. The enemy will be prepared, and it will be even more difficult to achieve the element of surprise. Yang Qindong was thinking about how to seize the opportunity when there was one. Therefore, Class 95's machine gun was brought out. It had 75 bullets and a firing speed of nearly 1,000 meters per second. Very few people could survive such a firearm. Therefore, the on-duty machine gun was taken out, and along with the sound of gunfire, a series of continuous gunshots rang out. The oncoming ninjas in black clothes were like wheat fields blown by a strong wind, like chives cut by a sharp knife, crazily falling to the ground. The instant they fell to the ground, blood burst out from their bodies. In the end, each and every one of them fell to the ground with an unwilling expression. Jenin and Chunin were caught off guard. None of them were spared. They became live targets and were shot to death. On the other hand, the 3 Jonins reacted very quickly, and because they were hiding behind the other ninjas when facing the machine gun fire, only one of them was hit and fell to the ground and died. The other 2 were lucky enough to survive, and at the same time, they rushed to Yang Qindong's location. This time, they came to receive 2 missions. The first was to snatch the princess, Kohara Junko. The second was to kill Yang Qindong, the Duke of Loyalty. Being surrounded by so many people, it was impossible to snatch the princess away. They could only try their best to complete the second mission, which was to kill Yang Qindong. Even if they died, it would be worth it. Kid, you're courting death. Seeing that the ninjas were still unwilling to give up and wanted to threaten the young master, Tiger's Mane and Beta Persei shouted respectively and faced the 2 ninjas. With them here, they would never allow anyone to harm the young master. Hu Mang took a few large steps forward and blocked a superior ninja. He pulled out the Ben-Edge army thorn from his body and faced the ninja blade that also seemed to be sharp. The moment the 2 of them met, the sound of metal clashing could be heard. The other members of the Cold Front could only see dazzling lights and shadows. On the other side, Beta Persei also blocked another Jonin with his strong and tall body. It's just that he was not used to using weapons. When facing the sharp ninja's sword, he could only take step by step back and look for the opponent's flaws to counterattack. After retreating 5 steps, Yang Air stretched out his long arm, wanting to take advantage of his long body to snatch the ninja's sword from his opponent. But at this time, the situation suddenly changed. The Jonin who was in front of him suddenly disappeared without a trace. Ninjas were very fast, and this was the first time Yang Air came into contact with them. So when he found that his opponent was gone, he had a bad feeling in his heart, and the first thing he did was to look at his young master's position. and the worrying scene was playing out. The Jonin, who had just disappeared, had already come in front of Yang Qindong and handed the ninja's sword forward. The blade with a cold intent went straight to Yang Qindong's chest. It was so fast that many people only saw the shadow of the blade. Looking at this scene, Junko was so scared that she almost fainted and shouted, "No!" After that, her whole body staggered backward. Fortunately, Kobayashi had been paying attention to her and reached out to support her in time. She didn't fall to the ground and suffer any injuries. As for Yang Qindong, the sudden appearance of the blade went straight to his chest. His eyes suddenly narrowed, and then at the same time, his body in an incredible way suddenly moved to the side, letting the tip of the ninja's sword brush past his clothes. If this scene was recorded, it would be surprising to find that the tip of the sword was only a millimeter away from Yang Qindong's clothes. After his body suddenly moved to the side and avoided the attack of the sword, Yang Qindong didn't even look at it and kicked it vigorously. This kick almost burst out with 80% of Yang Qindong's strength. This blow accurately kicked the blade of the ninja's sword. The powerful force made the ninja's arm numb, and then the ninja's sword was kicked into the air. Without a weapon in his hand, the ninja's momentum couldn't help but weaken. At this moment, Beta Persei finally arrived. He roared and rushed over. Then, without any scruples, he used his huge body to hit the ninja's body. Bang! Under the powerful impact, the ninja's flexible but thin body flew upside down like a kite with a broken string. As he flew backwards, he spat out a mouthful of blood that splattered all over the ground. His body also turned into an arc and heavily fell to the ground. "Young master, Beta Persei is guilty." His nearly 2-meter-tall body fell to the ground with a plop, kneeling in front of Yang Qindong, causing the ground to tremble as if it had been greatly shaken. "Dong Shuai, are you okay?" Seeing that the situation seemed to be stable, Junko also broke away from Kobayashi's protection and hurriedly ran to Yang Qindong, then asked with concern, "I'm fine." Yang Qindong looked at Junko's bright and beautiful eyes and said, but just after he finished speaking, his eyes suddenly revealed a murderous aura, and then his body suddenly rotated, picking up Junko and dancing in the air. Junko was picked up, her feet were off the ground, and she felt as if her whole body was flying at this moment. And in the process of rotating, 3 shiny ninja darts were shot toward her body. Junko, who didn't understand why Yang Qindong suddenly picked her up, finally understood that this was the last attack launched by the fallen ninja. He wanted to kill her. As soon as this thought flashed through her mind, she clearly heard the feeling of the dart entering her body. Then she noticed that Yang Qindong, who was holding her, had a tight face and slightly wrinkled eyebrows. It was obvious that he was hit by the dart. Yang Qindong was hit by a dart in order to save her. At this moment, Junko couldn't stop her tears from flowing out. If it was Kobayashi who did this, she wouldn't feel the slightest bit surprised. Since he was a guard, he should be prepared to protect his master with his life. But the one who saved her was Yang Qindong, so she was moved to tears. He was the Dong Shuai. He was the loyal and courageous duke of the great Ming dynasty. He was the youngest noble in the great Ming dynasty, and also a newly risen noble. He had an uncountable amount of wealth, loyal and powerful subordinates, for beautiful wives who were loved by everyone. And why did he save her? He still had a great youth, he still had a bright future, and he didn't even have a descendant until now. How could he? As the princess of the Japanese royal family, she knows a lot about ninjas, even if she doesn't know them very well. Most of the ninja darts were stained with poison. Once thrown out, it would enter the body. Unless the antidote could be immediately obtained, otherwise it would be a dead end. This was also the reason why ninjas were feared. Under normal circumstances, ninjas would complete certain death missions, and it was absolutely impossible for them to carry the antidote with them. In other words, Yang Chendong was hit by a ninja dart, and it was very likely that he wouldn't be able to survive. Junko's face was full of worry. After Yang Chendong's body trembled, he put her down. Immediately, Junko's shout rang in his ears. "No, you can't die. It's not worth it for you to do this for me." Junko, who was crying like a pear blossom, tightly hugged Yang Chendong's waist. She looked really pitiful. "It's a life. Why isn't it worth it?" Yang Chendong looked at Junko's crying face and reached out his right hand to gently wipe her tears. "It's just not worth it. I'm just a woman, and you have a great future. It's not worth sacrificing you to save you." Junko continued to cry. Chapter 267. "No, you are not a woman. You are a very beautiful woman, a woman who can make people's hearts beat." Yang Chendong looked at Junko's big eyes and said softly, You like me?" Junko suddenly understood something and looked at Yang Chendong with a hint of gentleness. "Yes, do you like me?" Yang Chendong bravely admitted, then looked at Junko and asked seriously. In Yang Chendong's eyes, Junko was not only cute and beautiful, but also had a tenacious character that deeply attracted him, especially when he knew that this woman learned a lot of knowledge and suffered a lot of unimaginable pain in order to strengthen the Japanese royal family. He felt even more distressed. Such a beautiful girl should be protected, instead of fighting like a man or even risking her life. Junko didn't know how to answer for a moment, and her eyes flashed with a hint of panic. She was taught from a young age that she couldn't easily like a person because she had a very important mission, and before she completed her mission, she couldn't easily say the word love. Seeing that Junko was avoiding something, Yang Chendong knew that she still had a psychological barrier, and if he couldn't take this opportunity to break through, it would be even more difficult to make her reveal her true feelings next time. For this reason, he continued to ask, "What's wrong? Even now, can't you tell me the truth?" I like you too." After being reminded, Junko suddenly remembered that Yang Chendong had been poisoned by the ninja dart, and perhaps he wouldn't be able to live happily. At this time, what was the point of confessing her true feelings to him? "I like you too." Finally, Junko's psychological barrier was broken under this special circumstance. She said to Yang Chendong, "I like you, and I have liked you since a long time ago. Even if you have other women, I am willing to be one of them. But, all right, that's enough." Hearing Junko's confession, Yang Chendong nodded with satisfaction. He then released his hand from Junko's slender waist, turned around, and walked towards the jonin, who was groaning on the ground. Yang Chendong walked in front of the jonin, and a handgun appeared in his hand. With a slight movement of his right index finger, a gunshot was heard, and a bloody hole appeared in between the jonin's eyebrows. Blood was flowing out nonstop. After finishing off the jonin who threw the ninja dart, Yang Chendong slowly turned his head and looked at Beta Persei and said, "I have taught you more than once that being merciful to the opponent is being cruel to ourselves. But just now, this man who was about to die launched his final attack and almost took your young master's life. This time, all of you are at fault. You know your crimes?" His voice was loud and clear, especially in this silent night. It spread far and wide, and it clearly drilled into the ears of every lung foam. "We are guilty." The sound of people kneeling on the ground was heard, whether it was Beta Persei, Tiger's Mane, who just killed a jonin, Chiu Vi, and the others from the first guard, or the lung foam, who came out to carry out the mission. They all knelt on the ground in an orderly manner. Everyone's eyes flashed with shame and regret. Yang Chendong didn't seem to be satisfied with everyone kneeling down and admitting their mistakes, nor did he intend to forgive them. Instead, he continued to say, "Today's matter will be written in the history of Lung Foam, and it will make all future generations vigilant. It's an honor that every one of your names will be recorded in the history of Lungfeng. This may be a disgrace, but since you are following this young master, you have to do your best. If you don't have the ability to do so, or if you don't have enough self-awareness, then you can apply to leave. This young master won't force you. Now, go and kill all those assassins. Remember, it's not a disgrace to kill a dead person or someone who is about to die. On the contrary, it's a way to take responsibility for yourself and respect your opponent. You understand? Understood. Dozens of people answered in unison. Although the effect of the flare had already worn off, the place returned to darkness. But everyone still lowered their heads in shame. Today, their names will be remembered by future generations, and they will be written in the list of shame. This kind of action was equivalent to taking half of their lives. Some people even had the idea of not wanting to live anymore and wanted to die to show their loyalty. But in the end, they didn't do so because everyone knew that running away was the behavior of the weak. The real strong weren't afraid of failure. They should face it head on, then correct, and become stronger. After being reprimanded, Tiger's Mane and others quickly took action, and all the ninjas who had been dead for a while on the ground were stabbed. All the corpses were almost poked at this moment, and the smell of blood filled the air for a while, but no one showed mercy or even sympathy. Everything was as the young master had said. Being merciful to the enemy was being cruel to oneself. Looking at everyone's actions, Yang Chendong's eyes flashed with a gratified look. These people have been with him for a long time, and it was inevitable that they would become arrogant and willful. It was necessary to teach them a lesson at the right time. Not to mention, today's matter was really dangerous. If he hadn't been prepared in advance and wore a bulletproof vest, Yang Chendong's life would have been taken by the poisonous dart just now. Lung Feng's performance made Yang Chendong satisfied and relieved him. But Junko, who had just confessed, was still looking at Yang Chendong with an incredulous look. Perhaps she thought that this Dong Shuai would die after being hit by the poison dart. That was why she was very surprised to see him talking so confidently as if nothing had happened. What's wrong? Do you want something to happen to me? Yang Chendong had already arrived in front of Junko, and when he saw her expression of disbelief, he asked with a magnetic and caring voice, How can you be fine? Didn't you just get hit by the poisonous dart? Junko asked instinctively, blinking her big eyes, looking forward to Yang Chendong's explanation. Yang Chendong never liked to explain, because only when he did something wrong, he would explain, and only when he faced stupid people would he explain. First, he didn't do anything wrong, and second, Junko was very smart, so such an explanation was even more unnecessary. Idiot! How can a small poisonous dart hurt this young master? You should have heard of my legend. I am the god of war, invincible. But you, why did you suddenly leave Young Village without even saying goodbye? Do you know, if I didn't find out that you were gone and brought people here in time, I'm afraid you would be dead now. While talking, Yang Chendong slowly approached. When the distance between them was less than an arm's length, he squatted down, slightly stretched out his hands, and abruptly lifted Junko up into the air. Her body suddenly left the ground. This change surprised Junko, who was still in the state of thinking. From childhood to adulthood, the only one who dared to do this to her was her father, now being carried by Yang Chendong, who was only a few years older than her, and was also young. It would be strange if she didn't shout in surprise. Just as she shouted, before she could do anything to struggle, Yang Chendong's caring voice sounded in her ears. It's so cold, but you're still wearing so little. Aren't you afraid of getting sick? All right, my embrace is still warm. Now, you just have to stay in there obediently. As soon as he finished speaking, Yang Chendong took large strides and turned around, heading in the direction of the Yang family manor. On both sides of him were Captain Chovy and the members of the First Guard Squad. Such a scene, such an atmosphere, made Junko, who originally wanted to struggle, forget everything, because Yang Chendong's arms were so warm that she couldn't bear to leave. More importantly, she found that she actually liked this feeling, this temperature, this breath. Junko didn't make any struggle letting Yang Chendong carry her to Yang Village. Kobayashi, who was behind her, didn't have such good treatment. Beta Persei strode in front of him with a fierce face. "Do you want to walk on your own, or do you want me to carry you?" "I'll walk on my own." Kobayashi felt the strong anger coming from Beta Persei's body. He had already experienced this person's power, so he was really afraid. He was really afraid that if he answered a little slower, the other party would heavily injure him and then carry him back to Yang Village. In that case, even if he was lucky enough to not die, he would probably lose a layer of skin, tiger's mane, and the Lung Feng stayed behind to clean up the battlefield. This was also something that the elite Lung Feng were very good at. Soon, a big pit appeared, and the bodies of the 43 ninjas were buried in the ground. When the soil was finally covered after a night of cold wind, it would be difficult to find this place. After only half an hour, the originally lively place became quiet again. When the wind blew, the place returned to the silence of the night. The Japanese diplomatic mission in the capital. The sky was almost bright, but there was still no news. Kimura Yoshida was furious. He raised his hand and slapped Captain Qishong's face. He roared angrily, "What the hell is going on? Why did you send so many people, but none of them came back? Give me an explanation." "Yes." Qishong lowered his head and answered, but his face showed that he was very wronged. This was Kimura's plan, and he was the one who sent the ninjas. Now he was asked to explain. What could he say? What could he explain? "Investigate. Send someone to investigate. I want to know where these people went. I want to know if Yang Village still exists." Kimura Yoshida's angry voice continued to sound. Qishong left the room as if he had been granted amnesty, and then a large number of people were sent out. As soon as the gate opened, they would go out of the city to investigate and inquire about the news. For the matter of 43 ninjas disappearing without any reason, even Ikegami was very curious. Chapter 268. The attack of the ninjas was originally a secret. Even he was the last to know about it. Then who was it that leaked the news? Let them all be wiped out, and none of them return. Also, what kind of existence was Yangjia Village? Why did they always suffer heavy losses every time they dealt with this loyal prince? What was even worse was that the appearance of the ninjas couldn't be told to the outside world. In other words, whether these ninjas were all killed or not, he couldn't reason with the great Ming dynasty as an envoy of Japan. After arranging for Qishong to investigate the disappearance of the ninjas, Kimura Yoshida went straight to the Ministry of Rights in a palanquin. Today, the great Ming dynasty was still in its prosperous period. As for Japan, it was still a huge monster. But this didn't mean that they didn't dare to speak to the strong. On the other hand, General Ashikaga Yoshimasa, who stood behind Kimura Yoshida, belonged to the hardline faction. Perhaps it was because they grew up in Japan, they were used to being short-sighted. They were used to thinking that everything revolved around them. With this thought in mind, Kimura Yoshida was instructed before this trip. He must return to Princess Junko. For this purpose, he could even threaten the great Ming dynasty. Under the policy of banning the sea, not long after the great Ming dynasty was defeated by the Walla, the great Ming dynasty was divided into two. He was confident that the great Ming dynasty wouldn't be willing to offend them and treat them as enemies. In the Ministry of Rights, the chief official on duty today was Left Assistant Minister He Wen-yuan. He became a scholar when he was young, and then he finally stepped on the path of Jinshi. He became one of the representatives of scholars, and one of the supporters of Confucianism. He was still very principled. When He Wenyuan saw the arrogant Kimura Yoshida in the reception room and learned that this person actually asked the great Ming dynasty to unconditionally release the previous envoy Aoki Yuki and return the Japanese merchants who were imprisoned in Yongjia village to them, He Wenyuan's face became very ugly. Emissary Green would committed a crime in the capital of my great Ming, almost injuring an important official of my great Ming. The implications of this matter are too great for me to say anything about, so it's best not to speak of it. As for your second request, I don't know what's going on with that Japanese businessman you mentioned. However, as far as I know, there aren't any merchants imprisoned in Yang Manor. I'm very suspicious of the reliability and veracity of your source of information. Faced with the aggressive Kimura Yoshida, He Wenyuan retorted, putting aside the fact that Yang Chendong's writing style was excellent. He Wenyuan admired it. With Dong Shuai's reputation alone, why would he need to confine anyone? Not to mention that he was a merchant from another race. If it had been someone else, it would have been possible. After all, businessmen were rich, and they could always get some benefits by capturing them. But does Dong Shuai lack money? Baka, are you doubting my words? Do you not believe me? Being blocked by He Wenyuan's words, Kimura Yoshida was naturally very angry, and his tone naturally carried the fire of anger. This isn't a matter of whether I believe you or not. This official is only speaking based on the facts. Since you don't have any evidence, forgive this official for being unable to believe your words. Also, please pay attention to your wording. As far as I know, the word baka doesn't mean anything good, right? He Wenyuan didn't understand Japanese, but looking at Kimura Yoshida's expression, he guessed that it shouldn't be something good, so he reminded him. Here, it has to be said that the ancient people of China were broad-minded. They always regarded themselves as a great country, and in accordance with the principle of broad-mindedness, they rarely did anything aggressive. When they were strong, their opponents would often submit to them and pay tribute, and the dirty things they had done before would be forgotten. And once China entered a period of weakness, those small countries that once seemed obedient would jump out one by one, wanting to get a share of the benefits. Under the cycle, the country's territory was getting smaller and smaller, and the feeling it gave people was getting more and more kind. Because Kimura Yoshida understood this, he wasn't afraid of the great Ming. First, he would scare them to achieve his goal. If the tough method didn't work, he would bow his head and admit his mistake, and there would be no danger. How could a country that forbade the sea pose a threat to Japan, which was surrounded by the sea? With this in mind, Kimura Yoshida naturally didn't take He Wenyuan's reminder seriously. On the contrary, his eyes narrowed, and a cold light flashed in them. Assistant Minister, this ambassador received the order of our emperor and General Ashikaga Yoshimasa to bring the Japanese businesswoman back to Japan. In order to achieve this goal, we have prepared everything. You know everything? If you refuse to hand her over, it will be a contempt to our country, and this is something that our emperor and general can't allow. If you must do this, then we don't mind gathering thousands of warships. When the time comes, if the army really presses on the border, I don't know if the newly ascended emperor can withstand it. The more Kimura Yoshida spoke, the more ruthless and murderous Kimura Yoshida's voice became. When He Wenyuan heard these words, he trembled all over. Scholars rely on their knowledge and mouth, and they are not proficient in things like war. Otherwise, the ancient people wouldn't have left behind a famous saying, when a scholar meets a soldier, it's impossible to reason with him. Kimura Yoshida suddenly said that they might declare war on the great Ming because of this matter, which made He Wenyuan realize the importance of this matter. At this moment, this matter was not something he could handle. After a moment of hesitation, he replied, "All right, I understand your request. I will report this matter to our emperor. At the very least, I'll have to ask the envoy to wait for 2 days to see what the outcome will be. Seeing that the threat seemed to be effective, Kimura Yoshida nodded happily. All right, this envoy will wait for news from your country, but please hurry. After all, this envoy has a good temper, but it doesn't mean that our emperor and general have the same temper. The meeting was over. Kimura Yoshida left the Ministry of Rights Yamen with a smug look on his face. Soon, He Wenyuan's sedan also left the Yamen and went straight to Minister Hu Zhao's residence. He Wenyuan's sudden visit made Hu Zhao, who was resting at home, change into an official's robe and receive the guest in the main hall. Needless to say, Hu Zhao could feel that something big must have happened for the left assistant minister to come in such a hurry. Sure enough, when He Wenyuan explained his meeting with Kimura Yoshida in detail, Hu Zhao's eyes wrinkled. According to the ancestral teachings of the Great Ming, that is, the Great Emperor Yongle Zhuди, the Great Emperor of the Ming Dynasty, personally led his troops on a 10,000-li expedition to sweep away the Desert Empress for the second time and return to the imperial court in Beijing. Our dynasty's national power is supreme. It surpasses the ancient times. It controls the north, invades the west, the south, the west, and the barbarians of the west. These words were no marriage, no reparations, no ceding of land, and no tribute. There was also the meaning of the emperor guarding the country and the emperor dying for the country. It was just that the Great Ming was now divided into two and had just fought a great battle with the Walla. It could be said that the Great Ming had suffered heavy losses, and the elites were all dead. Although the military recruitment had now begun, it would take time to recover to its peak. At this moment, if Japan attacked the border at sea, it would undoubtedly be a headache for the Daizong Emperor. We can't fight. Hu Zhao hesitated for a moment before giving an answer that was close to the bottom line. This answer was not different from He Wenyuan's. He also did not want to have any friction with Japan. If he backed down, he would have to agree to the other party's demands and conditions. Since this matter involved the Duke of Loyalty and Courage, he was powerless to do anything about it. Therefore, he explained, "Minister, no matter what, since this matter has happened, we should first report it to the emperor and inform the Duke of Loyalty and Courage." In the end, this was He Wenyuan's real intention. Using the opportunity of reporting to the emperor, he expressed a certain amount of goodwill to Yang Qindong. Naturally, this favor would not be small. That's right. Hu Zhao had been an official for many years, so how could he not understand? He immediately understood and nodded with a smile. I will go to the palace to meet the emperor and send someone to inform the Duke of Loyalty. Minister, please go back first. The Ministry of Rights still needs someone to be on duty. Yes, Minister. Since he had sent out his goodwill, He Wenyuan naturally should also leave. After the two of them greeted each other, they went their separate ways. Imperial Palace Main Hall. Hu Zhao was standing in front of the Daizong Emperor, Zhu Qiyu, and recounted everything that He Wenyuan had reported. After he finished speaking, he quickly closed his mouth. The emperor needed time to think, and as an official, he only needed to report the matter. As for how to deal with it, it would be up to the emperor to decide. How dare you? After listening to Hu Zhao's explanation, Zhu Qiyu immediately slammed the dragon table angrily, his chest heaving up and down violently. It was obvious that he was extremely angry at this moment. No matter what, the blood of the Zhu family still flowed in his body, so he still had some courage. When the Great Ming Dynasty was at its peak, Japan, modern-day Japan, was one of the Great Ming Dynasty's vassal states, and also one of the non-conquering states. When were they not obedient children in front of the Great Ming Dynasty? Only a few years had passed, so how could they have the courage to clamor? At this moment, Zhu Qiyu really wanted to lift the ban on the sea in anger. He believed that with the great Ming dynasty's national strength, they would be able to become one of the overlords of the sea again in a few years. At that time, Japan would always be under the attack of the great Ming dynasty. However, this thought was just a moment of anger, and he quickly calmed his anger. It was not because of anything else, but because the new army had just been established, the firearms battalion had been rebuilt, and new firearms were also being developed. All of these required a lot of manpower and material resources. As a result, he did not have the ability to do other things. Chapter 269. Your Majesty, please calm down. In my humble opinion, since this matter involves the Duke of Loyalty and Courage, let him handle it. Chief Steward Jining, who was standing to the side, saw Zhu Qiyu's weakness under his anger. He quickly gave Zhu Qiyu a way out of the situation. When Hu Xiao heard that the matter was to be handled by Yang Qindong, he immediately understood what Jining meant. He wanted to speak up to stop him, but Zhu Qiyu had already spoken. That's right. Since this matter involves the Duke of Loyalty and Courage, let him handle it first. Zhu Qiyu knew that this was a way out of the situation. He immediately took advantage of the situation and pushed the troublesome matter out of the way. Let Yang Qindong handle it. If he was weak, then his title as the god of war would become a joke. When it spread throughout the world, it would be a serious blow to his reputation. As the emperor, he could be happy and take the initiative. On the other hand, if he wanted to be tough, then the matter would be left to him. When the time came, as the emperor, he only needed to say that the national treasury was empty. At that time, Yang Qindong would be the one who was in a difficult position, not him. Zhu Qiyu was very adept at using the tactic of retreating in order to advance. While Jining praised the emperor's wisdom, he sneered in his heart. He wanted to see how Yang Qindong would solve this problem this time. When he had defeated Walla, he had relied on advanced firearms. But Japan was far away at sea. Without a large warship, what could he do? How could he create a storm with one turn of the hand? Jining was even prepared to immediately spread Kimura Yoshida's words and announce to the public that the emperor had given the authority to deal with this matter to Zhong Dangong. He wanted to use this opportunity to make things difficult for this Zhong Dangong, who didn't put him in his eyes. If Yang Qindong did not handle it well and lost the support of the people, he would have countless ways and excuses to punish him. In this way, all of Yang Qindong's assets would be flooded into the national treasury. As the one who carried out the order, he would certainly benefit greatly from it. Under Jinying's suggestion and Zhu Qiyu's tacit approval, Kimura Yoshida's incident quickly began to spread. It didn't take long for the cause and effect of the incident to spread all over the streets. In the Yang Qindong's manor, 15 li south of the city, Yang Qindong also saw the emperor's decree. There seemed to be a tacit understanding between them. Yang Qindong was not willing to see Zhu Qiyu, and Zhu Qiyu did not seem to want to see Yang Qindong either. If there was anything, the eunuchs would come and pass on the edict. Are you trying to make things difficult for me by leaving this matter to me? Looking at the golden imperial edict on the desk, Yang Qindong smiled faintly. In the study, Junko had already dressed up and was standing beside Yang Qindong. When she came back last night, she caught a cold. Later, she fell asleep in Yang Qindong's warm embrace. When she opened her eyes again, she found that she was still in Yang Qindong's arms. With a red face, Junko struggled to get up and then thanked Yang Qindong. Seeing that you caught a cold and hid in my arms, I didn't call you. Come, here is a bowl of ginger soup. It's still hot. Drink it to get rid of the cold. Yang Qindong saw Junko struggling to get up, laughed, and reached out to hug her again. Then a bowl of hot ginger soup was delivered to Junko's mouth. from childhood to adulthood. Although it could be said that Junko was used to having her clothes stretched out and food served, she was still not used to being served like this by a big man. But considering that this was Dong Shuai's kindness, she couldn't refuse. So, she reached out and drank the whole bowl of ginger soup. After doing this, Junko remembered that she had just woken up, so her makeup must be messy. So, she quickly went out to clean up. When she came back, before she could say a few words to Yang Qindong, Zhu Qiyu's imperial decree arrived. Junko was a very smart girl. The moment she saw the imperial decree, she thought of a lot of things. When she thought of the things she had heard before, she said with a surprised face, "Your great Ming Emperor is so powerful. He clearly wants to push the trouble to you. Don't say that about our emperor." Yang Qindong smiled and reached out to touch Junko's nose, and then said, "How can I not know what the emperor means? If he didn't do this, I would have intervened." "Is it because of me?" Junko looked at Yang Qindong curiously. Taking the initiative to attract trouble, she really couldn't think of why the smart Dong Shuai would make such a choice. If there must be a reason, then it was probably because of her. After all, Kimura Yoshida wanted her, didn't he? Yes and no. Yang Qindong gave an ambiguous answer. Few people who were born in China in the future had a good impression of Japan. Most of them even had a trace of resentment in their hearts, so they were called angry youths. Unfortunately, Yang Dong in his previous life was one of them. In this life, he became Yang Qindong, but this kind of thinking didn't change at all. Yang Qindong had both love and hate for this island country. What he hated was what they had done to China, and what he loved was their positive spirit. Perhaps because of the geographical location, they clearly knew that it was not easy to live. If they wanted to live a better life, they could only obtain resources through external expansion. The environment limited their thinking, so they had to do something to the nearby China. This was something that even Yang Qindong couldn't change. And if he didn't want to see the scene of killing each other, perhaps there was a good way, that was assimilation, or a more vulgar way, annexation. As long as he annexed Japan and took it as his own, then his own people wouldn't fight with each other. In order to achieve this goal, Kimura Yoshida had to pass this hurdle, and if he used it well, he could have a legitimate reason, an excuse to take the initiative to attack. This was the fundamental idea of Yang Qindong to intervene in this matter. But Junko must have thought that it was because of her, so Yang Qindong didn't need to explain anything. He gave a yes and no, but in Junko's ears, it made her very grateful. She naturally didn't know the ambition of the man in front of her. She simply thought that he was looking for trouble to protect her. At this moment, her love for Yang Qindong in her heart increased. A man who could take on such a big thing for her, even risking his life to save her, such a man was worthy of her life. "Come, arrange something. I want to see Kimura Yoshida." Yang Qindong's voice sounded in the study, and soon the voice of Tiger's mane came from outside. "Young master, we will arrange it." The news that Kimura Yoshida, an envoy of Japan, threatened to invade the great Ming dynasty spread like a whirlwind through the streets of the capital. For a time, everyone was talking about this matter. In the streets and alleys, there were always people in twos and threes talking about it. Perhaps because Japan was one of the vassal states of the great Ming dynasty, and because the capital was not near the sea, the people here didn't feel the trouble of Japan invading the sea, and there was no worry on their faces. They thought that it was nothing more than a small country that needed to be taught a lesson. How dare it provoke the great Ming dynasty? Because they were ignorant, they were fearless. Ordinary people knew too little about the outside world. What they knew was limited, so they were fearless. However, for some scholars and businessmen who had traveled far and wide because they had seen and heard a lot, they would not be so relaxed. The Soaring Heaven restaurant had once been a rather famous restaurant in the capital. A group of noble scions had gathered here, and their sources of information were much wider than those of the common folk. It was precisely because of this that the discussion on this issue was particularly intense. In the hall, a tall and fat young man was expressing his opinion at this moment. Around him, there were about a dozen young masters or young master in brocade robes. Just from their clothes, one could tell that these people were either rich or noble. Speaking of me, Japan has always been paying tribute to the Ming dynasty and is one of the tributary states to the Great Ming dynasty. How dare they threaten the Great Ming dynasty? In the end, it's because someone stepped on their tail. As the saying goes, even a rabbit bites when cornered, let alone a sea country. This person's voice was clear and precise, and after he finished speaking, the crowd began to cheer. Brother Bai's words are extremely correct. Then, based on your words, as long as we don't push them too hard, Japan won't negotiate with us with such an attitude. There was no lack of flatterers in the crowd. On the surface, they were asking for advice, but in reality, they were praising. It can't be said to be completely correct. It's just the words of one side. Reality should be as such. As long as we can satisfy their demands and conditions, I presume that the situation can take a turn for the better at any time. The man called Brother Bai chuckled, his face flushed red with pride and excitement. Very good. You said it yourself that it's just the words of one side, and in reality, it really isn't entirely correct. A voice suddenly rang out, resounding through the main hall of the immortal abode. This voice caused the smug Brother Bai's expression to turn extremely unsightly. Looking at the source of the voice, one could see a handsome young master in a white robe. When he saw who had spoken, Brother Bai's expression became even more gloomy. Wang Si, what do you mean by this? The person who had spoken was a student of the Yang Clan Academy, Wang Si. He was also the grandson of the current Minister of Appointments, Wang Ji. Studying in the Yang Clan Academy wasn't all about studying hard every day. There were days off. In Yang Qindong's words, this was called striking a balance between work and rest. At the same time, he also encouraged his students to delve deeper into life, into the midst of the common people, to experience the various facets of life and understand the needs of the common people. Chapter 270. It was precisely because of this that Wang Si didn't choose to eat at the immortal abode. Instead, he went to the Flying Sky restaurant, which was much lower in quality. He wanted to experience a different environment, and different people gave him different feelings. However, he didn't expect to hear Yuanbi's boisterous speech here. When he heard something that angered him, he couldn't help but retort. According to Yuanbi, someone had stepped on Japan's tail. Needless to say, that person was Yang Qindong. It was because Yang Qindong had taken in Junko that Kimura Yoshida was angered. This was something that many people knew. Since someone dared to publicly criticize his teacher, how could Wang Si just stand by and do nothing? Although he was a bit older than Yang Qindong, the sixth young master of the Yang Clan's academy had already conquered everyone's hearts with his calmness and knowledge that exceeded his age. As a result, the students all considered themselves students. How could a student allow others to slander their teacher? What's more, Yuanbi had a grudge against Yang Qindong. Yuanbi was Yu Xiong's elder brother, and also the grandson of the Minister of Justice, Yu Shuriwei. However, he was much stronger than Yu Xiong, who had failed to live up to expectations and been executed. He was already in charge of the Ministry of Justice in his 20s and was a major sixth-rank official. His grandfather, Yu Shuriwei, had contributed greatly to this. However, Yuanbi himself had also lived up to expectations. His performance was outstanding. They were both descendants of influential figures, and both were young masters. Their ideals were different. and their opinions were different. As soon as they met, the smell of gunpowder would naturally fill the air. Now, Yunbi was criticizing his teacher. It would be strange if Wang Si could just swallow this anger. When Yunbi saw Wang Si's accusation, his face became very ugly at first, but soon returned to normal. He walked over with a smile and said, "I was wondering who it was. It turns out to be our editor Wang Si. Wang Si's previous position was Hanlin Academy editor, a 7th-level official position. Oh, by the way, I heard that you have quit long ago. Now, you are a student. Haha, you are really promising. If I remember correctly, you are only 1 year younger than me. Why are you getting worse and worse as you live? Why are you still so young?" Yunbi's sarcastic words fell into Wang Si's ears. His expression didn't change. After studying in the Yang clan's academy for several months, he had learned 70% of how to maintain one's temper. He knew when to get angry, and when to do so would only make his opponent angry. Therefore, he didn't pay attention to Yunbi's words. Instead, he corrected the topic and said, "Yunbi, this young master said that your analysis is wrong. Please don't change the topic." Seeing that Wang Si didn't fall for his trick and still didn't let go of his previous words, Yunbi's face darkened and said, "What? My mouth is on this young master's body. Do I need your permission to speak? As for you, you're no longer an official. Why do you kneel when you see this young master?" Yunbi, don't be so smug. This young master is also a self-admitted scholar. According to the laws of the great Ming dynasty, I don't need to kneel when I see an official. Who do you think you are? How dare you ask me to kneel? Wang Si's expression was normal. He wouldn't be frightened by Yunbi's words. His grandfather was the current minister of the Ministry of Personnel. He was in charge of the affairs of the officials. What kind of officials hadn't he seen before? A minor major 6th rank official couldn't scare him. Yunbi, who was refuted by Wang Si, had an ugly expression on his face. Out of the corner of his eye, he noticed that the young masters who followed him were looking at him as if he was a joke. He felt that they were right. He was just like a clown. Yunbi, who cared a lot about his face, felt that if he didn't do something, he would be seen through in the future. He thought about how his grandfather was the minister of the Ministry of Justice. A while ago, his 3rd brother, Xiong, was executed for causing trouble. This made him extremely angry. If he lost face here today, who knew how angry his grandfather would be when he found out? Yunbi suddenly became angry. He was still taller than Wang Si. He clenched his fists and approached him step by step. "Wang Si, we've always minded our own business. Get out of here, right now, and I'll pretend that you were never here." "Impossible. Unless you admit your mistake and apologize to the Duke of Loyalty, I won't leave. I'll even announce your matter to the world and let everyone judge what you said wrong." Wang Si noticed Yunbi's angry expression, but he wasn't afraid at all. He didn't waste his time in the Yang family academy. He ran and trained his body every day, so he had a stronger physique than the average young master. He wasn't afraid of Yunbi, who was also a young master. "Admit your mistake. Wang Si, I realized that after not seeing you for a few months, you haven't grown in other aspects, but your smarts have improved. All right, then I'll show you which one is bigger, an apology or a fist." Yunbi attacked as he spoke. He swung his right fist at Wang Si. Although the students of the academy didn't have high-intensity training like Lung Feng, their bodies were stronger than ordinary people. Wang Si could have jumped to avoid this punch that wasn't very fast and didn't have much strength behind it. However, he didn't do so. On the contrary, he stood there motionless as if he was scared silly. He allowed the fist to land on his chest with a bang. After the punch landed, Wang Xi's body trembled involuntarily, and he took half a step back. Yuanbi actually took the initiative to attack first. This scene shocked the other young masters and young master who were watching the show. They didn't have the background of these two people, whether it was the minister of the Ministry of Appointments or the minister of the Ministry of Justice. They weren't people they could offend. For a moment, they stood there, not knowing what to do. They didn't dare to pull him back or reach out to help. Wang Xi took half a step back from the punch, but there was no sign of pain on his face. On the contrary, he said calmly, "Everyone saw it. He was the one who made the first move. Since that's the case, don't blame me for being impolite." After he finished speaking, Wang Xi, who had just taken half a step back, suddenly took half a step forward. Using the momentum of this half step, he stretched out his right arm and his entire right shoulder at the same time. Wang Xi rotated his waist slightly. According to his usual training, Wang Xi injected all the strength in his body into his right shoulder. Then he punched out and hit Yuanbi's body that hadn't retreated in time. One used brute force, while the other used skill and the strength of his entire body. Both punched out, but it was obvious who had the upper hand. With just one punch, Yuanbi couldn't help but stagger and fall back as if he had lost his balance. Wang Xi, who didn't show mercy, was excited when he saw that his punch was effective. He flew up and followed up, throwing out 2 more punches. One of the punches hit Yuanbi's nose. Immediately, the sound of bone breaking rang out, followed by blood flowing out. This punch hurt Yuanbi so much that tears flowed out. When he reached out and touched his nose and felt blood, his expression changed drastically. He couldn't help but exclaim, "Ah, murder, murder!" He was no match for Wang Xi at all. After taking 3 punches in a row, Yuanbi could only keep running away. As he ran, he shouted at the young master and young masters who were watching the show, "Are you just going to watch like this? If I'm beaten to death here, all of you will be sued. Don't you know that?" Only then did everyone's attention return to the present with this shout. At that moment, everyone's expression changed drastically. They began to surround Wang Xi. From the looks of it, they clearly wanted to stop him and make him stop. But how could Wang Xi, who was in the mood to fight, stop so easily? After a few punches, he found that the simple fighting skills he learned in the Yang Academy were so effective. Wang Xi wouldn't be polite. He sighed in his heart that he was so powerful. Seeing that others wanted to stop him, he immediately threw out a punch at them without caring about anything else. These people wanted to stop him. It was clear that they were in cahoots with Yuanbi. It was not a pity to beat such people. Thump. After a few more punches, 2 of the young masters who came to stop the fight fell down. The others saw that Wang Xi was crazy. They were afraid that he would kill someone, so they didn't care about others and rushed up. In an instant, they surrounded Wang Xi tightly. Then they hugged his legs, grabbed his hands, and held his waist. Wang Xi, who was like a tiger who couldn't resist a pack of wolves, was quickly restrained. Yuanbi, who had run to the entrance of the Fei Tian restaurant, saw that Wang Xi was restrained and breathed a sigh of relief. At this time, he happened to see the soldiers of the warden's office patrolling on the street. He immediately shouted, "Help, someone is killing here." In the courtyard of the Japanese diplomatic mission in the capital, Yang Chendong appeared here under the protection of a group of guards wearing the signature camouflage uniform. Kimura Yoshida had been notified a long time ago. He also wanted to meet the Duke of Loyalty of the great Ming dynasty, who defeated the Walla's army and protected Junko. At the same time, he also made the previous ambassador, Aoda Yuki, stay in the prison of the great Ming dynasty, so he waited here for a long time. When the courtyard door opened, Kimura Yoshida didn't go out to greet Yang Chendong. He wanted to show Yang Chendong his power and let him know that he wasn't someone to be trifled with. That way, he could take more initiative in the following conversation. The courtyard door opened, but he didn't see Kimura Yoshida coming out to greet him. Yang Chendong, who was in the luxurious carriage, didn't get out. Instead, he said to Tiger's Mane outside the carriage in a very cold voice, "They are so arrogant. I'm here, but they don't know how to come out to greet me. Since they are so rude, then I'll tear down the door. I'd like to see how long they can last." "Yes," Tiger's Mane answered excitedly. Then he said to Lung Feng beside him, "Tear down the door. If they don't come out, then tear down the courtyard." You're tuning in to the Mystic Fist YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.